Hello, welcome to LearnPlus. My name is Brenda Bailey Hughes, and I am so happy that you're here. As you're logging in, let us know where you are today so that we see where all in the country or the world is represented. And let me get us started by telling you what our topic is today and then giving you another question to respond to in the comments as you get here and get settled in. I am a firm believer that a quintessential part of leadership, of management, of good supervision, of good team leadership is being able to coach our team members or our direct reports. And that so much of the overall team performance comes from these enriching one-on-one coaching conversations. And while I'm absolutely convinced of the importance of coaching and spend a lot of my time coaching or coaching on how to coach, I still see myself making some big mistakes when it comes to coaching. Mistakes because to prepare well for coaching takes so much time, and to get the conversation just right and then to know where I could improve is so hard to do because the only other person in the room with me might be the person that I'm coaching. And so they're sort of involved in the experience of the conversation, taking it in for themselves and not there as a critiquer of my work. So it's hard to get feedback on this. And today's course or today's conversation is all about how we can improve our coaching, but specifically by using AI, which was this novel idea, I thought, that Sara Canaday, our guest today, has done an entire course on in the LinkedIn Learning Library. We're going to show you how to get to that course when we wrap up here in a little bit. But oh my gosh, I learned so much in this course that I just was ecstatic when she said yes, that she'd come on and talk with all of you and give you some of these tips as well, because it's a game changer. In fact, once we're done, I have about an hour to get reset and then go into a coaching session. And I'm so glad we're having this now so that I can steal all these great tips from Sara and use them as I prep for this coaching call this afternoon. Some specific areas we're going to look at is how do we create really good questions using AI to make us better coaches? How do we role play some conversations that could be a little rough? And then how do we use AI to help with that awkwardness of getting evaluative feedback on our own coaching, which I just said can be really hard. Sara is a leadership strategist. She's an author. She's a LinkedIn author that an instructor that, again, you're going to hopefully go watch her course after this to get lots more details. Let's get Sara on here so that you can meet her and jump right into. Hello, Sara, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. It's great to be here.
Thank you. Thanks for jumping in with us. I think our learners are going to love what you have to share. Let's set the stage with just why should we worry about leveling up our coaching to begin with, let alone with AI? Just why should we even worry about coaching?
Yeah, well, here's what's interesting. I, just like you, work with leaders all the time. I know they're under a lot of stress. And yeah, I can talk about the fact that coaching helps employees feel like they matter, like their leader really understands them, cares about their progress, their effectiveness. But really, if I flip that around, coaching others and developing is one of the main things that leaders tell me is the most rewarding part of their job.
That's interesting.
But as you opened with, one of the biggest obstacles of doing coaching well is time. Just like anything else, they're strapped for time. So that's one sort of challenge. And the other challenge I hear is that I don't feel like I'm good at it. I want to do it. I see the value, but I've never been, trained on how to do it. I was never coached. And if I was, I didn't think it was a good job. So those two things are the two obstacles. And that's why I think AI can be a game changer and solve for both of those.
Solve for both time and that skill, that sense
Yes.
that I'm not sure I'm good at this.
Exactly.
I think it's interesting that Sara pointed out, we've been in coaching sessions on both sides. I've been the coach, I've been the coachee, and I've been in good and bad,
Right.
regardless of which hat I've had on. So I'm curious, from our learners that are online, and Kabir from Nigeria, welcome. So glad you're here. I'm so curious as to what you would consider a good coaching conversation. So when you think about, gosh, I've been in coaching conversations that went really well. I've been in coaching conversations that didn't go so well. Again, in either role, when you were the coach or when you were being coached, what are the indicators? What are the behaviors? What are the attributes of those good coaching sessions? And if we just kind of have those in our minds, then I think we can see how AI can help us get there a little better. So anybody that have comments about good coaching, let us know. I think that and I love this idea that it's not just for the improvement of the person and the satisfaction of the person that is being coached, but the satisfaction of the coach, that this is what leaders love to do. This is the reason all the headaches of leadership are sometimes worth it when you see that person that you've been working with really start to blossom.
Right. Absolutely.
Love that. So, okay. So we know that it's important to coach. We know that AI may give us some interesting tools or be a game changer in the way we manage the time and the skill level that we can bring to our coaching. I'm curious that it seems like at the heart of coaching is asking great questions. It's not so much the advice that we give, the wisdom that we bring, all this great experience, but it's just asking great questions. And yet, knowing that, even having read a few books on asking good questions, I walk into sessions and hear myself asking things like, well, how's the project going? Or, can I, or even, how can I be helpful? Or worse yet, I'll say, can I be helpful? Is there anything you need? Which is a yes, no question. I don't know, that's even worse. That's even worse. I know not to use closed-ended questions. So I am curious, again, from those of you online, what's your favorite question when you're in a coaching session? What kind of question do you think just really gets your brain going? Do you have a favorite coaching question? And then Sara, how can AI help us with this coaching concept?
Yeah, this is where it can be, really helpful, because I think, we're conditioned to get to the heart of the matter, especially as leaders. We're problem solvers. So we're going to tend to dive in and say, hey, here's what I've observed. Here's what I think may be going on. What do you think? Well, we haven't done anything to sort of tune into their critical thinking, right? Coaching is supposed to help the person reflect and try to make connections of what they did or didn't do and how they could have done it differently or better, right? And if we go in there with sort of the answer up front, we've stumped the whole process, right? So it's about asking an open-ended question that will get your coachee to think at a deeper level. And so here's where you can use AI, right? Because not all of us are, Aristotle. We don't think that way. We think about quick, efficient, how can we get to this? So, for example, and here's the show and tell part. Let's say you were coaching somebody who is not meeting performance metrics or they're not reaching their goals. You can go into AI, just, AI.com, chatgpt, the one that most people are using, but you can do this with Claude, you can use this with Bart, and you can ask them to help you, right? So you can go in with a really quick scenario. I'm coaching, you type in the prompt. I'm coaching an employee who is struggling to meet performance metrics, right? And you can say, please generate a short list of questions. Otherwise, you'll get too many. Believe me, I've done this enough. That will help me get to the heart of what they may be struggling with And here's the key. Please help me come across fair, empathetic, and curious.
Oh,
right? So you can add those types of things to your questions so that they don't give you a list of questions that sound like you're robotic,
right?
That
Right.
you really sincerely care and are curious, right?
Mm.
So here's the prompt. We just put an example. Let's see what it gives us. I mean, I've done this time and time again with different scenarios. I have no idea what it's going to generate.
Right? Yeah, like here we go. We're figuring this out.
Here we go, right? Can you share more about the specific challenges you're facing with meeting these metrics? Are there particular tasks or aspects of your role that you feel are more difficult or overwhelming lately, right?
Yeah.
I would think it would come up with something like, are there any challenges or obstacles right now that you feel are getting in the way of reaching your performance goals, right? And there it is. There's something similar. So, again, this is such a great thing to get you off center, right? Because it's like anything else. I don't want you to be a cover band. I want you to make these your own, right?
Sure.
So try them on, say them out loud. How would you adjust it so that it's more of how you would say something?
Right.
But it gets you off center. Then how you're going to start the conversation.
And nowhere in here is this like, how's it going question that I get myself stuck in. And then the conversation becomes so specific to that project that I've asked about that we don't get into that deeper level of reflection that I can see right off the bat. Those questions are going to start priming at a very different level of thoughtfulness or of reflection on the part of the person in the room with me. I loved the adding sort of the attributes that you wanted to come across in tone. I'm imagining leaders who've gotten some 360 or some type of feedback where they know that maybe they come across as arrogant. And I could prompt then and say, make sure that my questions leave me, project humility, or yes, if there's been any indication in 360 that I may play favorites or be partial to some, make sure I sound really fair and objective in these questions. I think that's a great way to have AI almost coach me on my own tone through the questions that I ask.
Absolutely. I mean, the one I think we hear most often is that, leaders can have feedback that they're too direct.
Yeah.
Right? And this resonates with me. I was a leader for 13 years in corporate, and what I found out is that when I get some feedback, I want some bread around the pill. You know how when you give a dog a pill, you can either open their mouth and shove it, or you can put some bread around it.
Right.
Well, I like bread around the feedback that I get, but somehow when I was giving feedback, I tended to put very little bread around it. And I'm just being, honest. I know it came from this need to be efficient. Let's move.
Yeah.
People would come into my office. I'd be like, what's up? Well, to some people, that's very off-putting, right? Yeah. And I get it. And so this idea that you can use AI to say, you can even put in there, help me formulate questions that don't come across too direct. Where I put some padding around the question.
Right. Interesting. Sound considerate and thoughtful, or sound kind and generous even.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, whatever it takes.
Interesting. Okay. I love that as a cue. Shelby's backstage with us. Shelby, did we have a second prompt around questions that we want to play with a little bit? Because I'm intrigued by the kinds of questions that really help learners get more self-reflective, perhaps.
I think the one that we talked about is, what if you already kind of know, right? So let's say there was a scenario where you were in a meeting with an employee and the meeting didn't go well, or as they anticipated, or as they hoped, and they were the one that was presenting, right?
Okay.
And so you could say,
hey, that didn't go very well, did it?
Yeah. You could say, hey, that didn't go well. What do you think happened? Which kind of puts the person on the defense. They're already feeling bad. You could say, hey, I'm coaching an employee who recently facilitated a meeting. It didn't achieve the results she expected. What are 3 questions I can ask to help her explore alternative approaches that could have led to her desired outcome?
There we go.
This is wordier than it needed to be. That was me, not not Shelby. And so, there you go.
Well,
Looking back on the meeting, what do you think worked well and what could have been improved? If you were to facilitate the same meeting again, what might you do differently to guide it toward the outcomes you wanted? Right? And so you more graciously and elegantly lead your coachee to sort of come up with their own solutions.
This one just hits a little too close to home. I really did have feedback one time. I taught a class, and I mean, it was going to go on for multiple days. This was just the first time. And the director of the program sat down with me at the dinner that was happening afterwards. And he really did say, that didn't go well, did it? And I was like, oh, ouch.
Yeah.
And then it left me, instead of reflecting on what I thought didn't go well, I started to tailspin into what didn't he like? What did he think went wrong?
Right.
Am I even seeing the things that he saw? And I was so embarrassed that he was so blunt about it that, it took me a minute to recover and probably didn't do my best processing because of the.
Well, I was going to say it's a distraction because then you're all consumed with being judged. And what others might have taken away, rather than moving quickly to, okay, how can I do this differently? Which is what you want.
Well, and I want folks on the team to learn to self-evaluate. And if I'm already there making that judgment, making that call, then I'm always in that role. They never, it's the guy that wrote Flow, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, he's got this great quote. Wait a minute, I don't want to mess it up, so let me find it because I've got it around here somewhere. Here. Some individuals have developed such strong internal standards that they no longer need the opinion of others to judge whether they performed a task well or not. The ability to give objective feedback to oneself is, in fact, the mark of an expert. I want my team to be experts. I want them all to have this ability to give objective feedback to themselves. Yeah, yes. I mean, and then when you were talking about how laborious and time-consuming coaching is, it starts becoming less and less time-consuming because I'm doing less and less of the evaluative work as the employees are doing it themselves.
Yeah, and let's not forget too that the other reason we ask questions, because to some people it feels gratuitous, like, oh gosh, you want me to do the Socratic method where I just keep asking questions. I feel like a counselor. Don't get me wrong. There's a point at which you ask 1 or 2 open-ended questions, and then you move to, are you open to what I observed type of thing, right?
Okay.
But the other reason we ask questions is because coaching is also a way to gather data. So you've gathered data beforehand, right? You either observed or you've heard secondhand, right? Something didn't go right or needs to be addressed. But by asking your coachee a question, you're collecting another data point. Yeah. What is it that they see here? Do they have any inclination of how they just impacted somebody in that meeting? Mm-hmm. Or are they completely unaware of their blind spot, right? So there's lots of reasons for asking these open-ended questions.
Right.
It's not just self-reflection.
Yeah. And you start at a totally different place in the conversation if that person is already aware of the impact that they had, the 3 things they did that led to that impact, the ways they wish they could change their behavior in order to get to the outcome that they wanted. I'm going back to that question that you prompted. That's a totally different conversation than someone who, when you ask, how do you think things went? What was that first question ChatGPT gave us back the what went well, what could have been different, like
Right.
looking back on the meeting, what do you think went well? Oh yeah, no, scroll back down. It was after the second question, Shelb, sorry.
In the meeting, yeah. What do you think went well?
What do you think worked well and what could have been improved? And if the person is just like, oh, that was a slam dunk, everything was great. Like, okay, wow, we're starting at a different place here in the conversation, aren't we?
Right.
Yeah. So again, data though, really useful data to know that that's what the person has said. All right. So we've used ChatGPT to come up with this great list of questions that are going to help get data, to allow the person to be leading the conversation, to be doing the self-evaluation work, to be doing the deep reflective work. Now let's imagine that despite having the best laid plans, nothing ever goes as we planned. So how could we use, I know you mentioned role play in the class, to anticipate some conversations that maybe don't go the way we'd hoped, or just to see how they may play out. Like, I've got this great list of questions. I hope it goes this way, but I don't know. So what would role playing look like? Tell us about.
So yeah, this is where it's a game changer, because you can practice role playing in the privacy of your own office, home office. This is the beauty of it, right? You don't have to role play with somebody else. You don't have to feel like you're being judged. So you can go in and prompt, ChatGPT, hey, let's engage in a role play where you are the employee, I'm the leader. You take the role of an underperforming team member who has failed to meet deliverables. At some point during this role play, throw me a curveball, right?
Okay.
Yeah, that's the part we can't anticipate. So, yeah, and so it says, great.
Oh my goodness, look at this.
Yeah, go. Let's start. You lead. I'll play the other point. Feel free to begin when you're ready, right?
All right. So I'm the leader. Hey, you missed some deadlines. That's not like you. What's up?
So let's say you put in here, hey, I've noticed you've missed important deadlines. This isn't like you, and it's starting to affect the team and your project timelines. Can you help me understand what might be going on? From here, AI takes over as the employee.
Honestly, I've been feeling a bit overwhelmed. I think I may have too many responsibilities right now. Oh, curveball coming. I like that it warns you. Dun, dun, dun.
Yep. Curveball coming.
The curveball is, this is on you, leader. You've set unrealistic expectations, especially given the support I'm getting.
Exactly. And let me just say, I mean, this isn't a live, we did not have any idea what it was going to come up with, because it will come up with something different every time. But I love this one because this isn't just out of the norm. I mean, this actually comes up quite a bit.
Yes.
Right? Where the person you're coaching wants to deflect. Yeah. And so here's your opportunity as a leader to sharpen your skill on how to redirect the employee back to the issue at hand, right?
Okay.
So then here's your chance to see what skill level you have of redirecting them back.
Can I try it?
Absolutely.
Okay, so Shelb, I know you're typing to keep up here. So what if I tried saying, oh gosh, okay. Thank you for that feedback. And then I might want to say, are there ways, given the existing responsibilities, that you could still meet the standard we've set? Now, I don't even know if that's a good or a bad answer, but let's see what happens. Oh, so now I might need to prioritize differently. Oh, here goes another curveball alert. I love that it warns us. Okay, so I'm still getting pushback from my hypothetical employee.
Yeah, I mean, and at this point, I would probably say, let's stop the curveballs and go from here.
Yeah, okay.
Right. I mean, so you can direct this any way you want, or let me try a different response.
Yeah, yeah.
And try something else on. It may be something like, well, as I discussed with you when you were hired, these were your performance standards. These have been vetted. We do time and motion studies. We've been using these metrics for over a year. Your other teammates don't struggle to meet those objectives. So you could take them in a different direction, right?
Right.
Now,
And
already
I would
having
just
said
keep
all that,
playing with answers to see
that's right.
what responses that I get. How interesting. I know that when I am doing any kind of training session and I say, okay, let's role play, there is always a collective moan and groan that issues up from the room. And I know it's because it's awkward, it feels inauthentic, we feel silly, but I could just jump into role playing with my AI platform all day long
All
and
day
learn so
long.
much without feeling so silly. Melanie, thank you. We're glad that you got to join us. It'll be on my feed, so you can come back and check out the ending to see what we've got. And hello, Renee from Costa Rica. Glad you are here. If you're just jumping in, you're seeing that we've been using ChatGPT Live to play with asking questions, getting a good list of questions that we could ask when we're trying to coach others. And then we just played around with a little bit to see what it would do for role playing. And wow, that is interesting.
Well,
And it's
here's
good
what,
at it. I mean, its responses were I was surprised. Like you said, sometimes ChatGPT can sound like a robot, but in this case, that deflection was so on point with what we really hear. I think if I go back to questions, I might ask GPT, knowing that I get that, let's say, your folks, right? And so maybe I have someone that frequently deflects or wants to make it about equity. I could even say, give me 5 kind but provocative responses to an employee who says the workload's unfair. I've been treated differently than everybody else, and really hone in on that.
exactly. And let me just say this. A lot of leaders I've spoken to not only love the role play, but to get off center, right? Because that's what, leaders are smart, right? But sometimes they just need to jumpstart. How do I jumpstart? Or how would I think this coaching scenario through? Sometimes what I tell them to do was put the coaching scenario in there and then ask ChatGPT to play the role of both the leader and the employee. And you can sit there and watch the coaching session happen.
Interesting.
And you're not actually having to do the leader part, but you can see how a leader might handle it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it can give you, again, some food for thought. I would never recommend that you then use this as your coaching template.
Right.
By any stretch. But again, sometimes you just need a jump start. You just need to see how might ChatGPT approach this.
Yeah.
And you can, pull some nuggets from there.
Absolutely. I love that. So when we role played, it seemed like there was an opportunity then there at the end for that self-evaluation of my coaching. Like I said, when I was coming up with that answer, I was even thinking to myself, I don't even know if I may be modeling like really bad coaching here on the fly. So would we use AI then to critique our own coaching skills?
Sure. Very simple. At the end of that conversation, you would simply type in, please use the conversation above to provide overall feedback on my responses and the potential outcome or the impact it could have on an employee.
Oh,
right? So there you have it. And then it's going to give you some feedback. which amazing, right? Because as you said, you're not really going to ask the person you're coaching, although I've had some leaders do this over time. How do you think I do as a coach? Or, how impactful was I in helping you move from A to B, or, however specific you can get? It's not often we can do that. It feels awkward, and it doesn't even seem like it's placed in the right, to ask the person you're coaching to evaluate you.
Yeah.
So, we can try it now if you want to and see what it comes up with. You can take this a step further after it's given you feedback. You can then ask it for development suggestions.
Oh, for myself. Interesting.
Yes. So let's see.
Yeah, and
let's see what happens here.
Let's get some feedback on our response here. A commendable effort. Commendable doesn't. Okay, so I acknowledge the employee's feedback, reproached without blame. I response about maintaining standards, but I could by asking how they met the standards. Okay, opportunities. When the employee raised concerns about workload distribution, you could have acknowledged their feelings more explicitly. Yeah, that is absolutely on point.
Yeah, and look, it even gives you
language I could have used.
Right.
Instead of general inquiries, I could have started with more targeted questions. Given that, I knew which tasks do you feel are taking up most time, and encouraging solutions. Oh, wow. I got a B+. I'll take it.
Hey, I would take that in a heartbeat.
That is brilliant, though.
Is it not brilliant? It really is helpful. And
so
again, it's given you its own ideas for language and messaging. And so let's just say you went in there to one of the feedback, Shelby, if we went back, for example, and we honed in on the very last thing, what things can I do? Or how would you suggest I sharpen my ability to balance accountability with support?
There we go.
Right. And so it's not just about telling you where you have some growth, but then you can ask it how you can sharpen in that area.
Let's see what they have. My advice would be read Ed Batista, who does a brilliant piece on balancing accountability and empathy or support. Yeah. Here's what I could do. I could make sure I've got clear standards and even the how-to. Yeah. I could also focus on the behavior, not the character. Don't say not reliable. These deadlines weren't met. Okay. Yeah, this is great. Zilto, thank you. I'm glad you're using AI and for lots of things. You're right. It is an incredible tool, especially if we're asking the right questions. Yeah, the prompting is so, so important. In fact,
it really is.
Yeah. That seems like the art is really figuring out how to create great prompts. Do you have general tips on creating good prompts for us?
Well, let me start with this, because I think this is a disclaimer in my courses. Anytime I talk about using generative AI for coaching, even though we've gotten really sophisticated, the bigger companies have what they call private instances of chat bots, meaning it's not being shared as a training tool. You want to leave out any proprietary information, right? So you don't want to put a person's name in there. You don't want to put your company's name in there. If you'll notice, all of our prompts were very generic. I have an employee who, right? So, that sounds obvious to some people, but it's worth repeating.
Yeah, right? We don't want any of you leaving this workshop today and then getting yourselves into trouble or violating privacy and confidentiality, since we are talking about employee coaching issues. Yeah, absolutely. So
that's critical. And the other thing is, be as detailed as you can about the scenario, and don't forget to put in the things you know make for a great coach, right? So at the very beginning, you'll notice I say, help me come across as fair, empathetic,
Yeah.
and inquisitive,
Okay.
right? Or curious. Those are all marks of a great coach.
Yeah.
Or, help me come across as genuinely interested in their perspective. However you want to frame it. And again, be as detailed as you can. And what I'm learning over time, I started using this a year ago to play around with coaching and some other things. ChatGPT is now giving you almost too many options, and the responses are becoming very substantive. So I've gotten better at giving me 3 questions that I could use.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to get, and then you're going to feel like, okay, wait, how do I sort through all of this?
Right.
Because the whole point is to make this easier for you to prepare.
Right. You said this is going to save us time. So that's right.
And so ask for brevity, ask for the top 3, the most impactful questions, however you want to frame it, but just so you get a more concise and succinct response from ChatGPT. That would be helpful as well.
So cue it, prompt it to capture the tone, the essence of the personality that I want to come through, and then prompt it for how much I want back, so that it really does become the time-saving tool that we're trying to use it to be. Okay, I love those. Those are very helpful. Thank you. I know you just said you've been playing with this for a year. How has it changed your coaching or the coaching of those who you've taught to use it? Have you seen big global changes that people have made or small tweaks they've made?
Yes, I really do think that, if I'm at a company and we're talking about coaching and we've, done a half a day of training around coaching, right? Because I have a coaching model, and then we talk about coaching skills, and then we sort of put it all together in what I call a real play instead of a role play, where, I have the group bring their own real challenges, right? And then have a peer coach them through a real challenge they're having. And then at the end, we process it, and then I move to AI as a tool. And, they almost go, oh, are you kidding me? I could have maybe used this for the real play, or I could have been using this all along. But, you can't skip to that point, because a leader still needs to know what a coaching framework looks like, right? And what the skills are inherently. I mean, then you won't know what to prompt ChatGPT, right?
Right.
And they also need to have their own discernment, because you don't know what's going to come up in a conversation.
Right.
And coaching is about the human touch. So as you said earlier, it's the art and science, it's the head and heart, it's the intentionality of the person that's coaching. And again, why take away some of that most rewarding part if you're going to completely rely on AI? And let's be clear, people you coach are going to know if you have used some sort of a script.
Yes.
They're going to see right through that.
Well, and if I'm using a script, I have violated everything that coaching really is about, because then I am directing the conversation, and this is more about me opening an opportunity for dialogue. And how can I do that if I've already scripted? So Zilda says, in my opinion, coaching process needs, besides the judgmental based on perception, the data analysis, the facts. Yeah. And then suggest ways to handle the challenges, and without violating privacy, as Sara so aptly reminded us. You could put that into ChatGPT or whatever platform you're using, Zildo, and say, here's the facts, here's the data, this is what's happening. Now, I need to work with this particular employee. What are some good questions I could be asking to make sure we're getting to the data, getting to the outcomes that we want. So absolutely use that data in a privacy-centric, mindful way, but to enrich those role play conversations that you might be having.
Right, and what he may have been referring to is also analyzing the performance data, right? Let's say it's kind of complicated. Let's say it's in a sales environment, and you're tracking data over a 6-month period, but there's some anomalies.
Yes.
Maybe market shifts, maybe that person actually changed, regions or, their territory. Maybe you can put a bunch of information and ask ChatGPT to analyze, how would you really determine the performance based on all of these factors? Again, as a leader, it's really ultimately your responsibility. You should have the experience and the know-how to discern what's going on, but it could be helpful.
Yeah.
It could be helpful.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah, Zildo, I don't know which of those you were thinking about, but either way, a really good point, and use of the tools that we have now available. Sara, if people need more Sara, where do they go? How do they get in touch with you or find out more about what you're reading, what you're writing about, what you're thinking about?
Sure. Well, I'm very active here on LinkedIn. I try to keep pace with my newsletters and provide strategies, help leaders who are overwhelmed. That's probably my biggest mission, is I think leaders are being tapped, frankly, to do more than should be expected of them in this day and age. And so I can either complain about that, or I can find ways to help leaders actually overcome these challenges with shortcuts, with strategies, with tools like AI. So certainly find me here on LinkedIn. You can watch any number of my courses on LinkedIn Learning. I think I have, a good 18, 19 courses, most of them centered around leadership and strategies for having a greater impact as a leader.
Yeah. And as I mentioned at the top of our time together, make sure you watch the Coaching with AI class that Sara's produced. Renee's curious if we think artificial intelligence is going to replace the coaching person in the future.
I don't personally, although, look at it now, it's already an option. If you want to be coached, you can go to an AI app and put in your own, challenges, and we're talking work challenges too, not just personal challenges. It's happening. That bot is not part necessarily of your industry. They're not within your company. They don't know what your specific challenges are. Of course, you can feed it as much as you can, but I don't think a chatbot will ever replace human-to-human coaching. And it takes that emotional intelligence, it takes that discernment and that experience in some very unique roles in order for us to be coached properly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. I've always thought that one, AI is not going to take our jobs as coaches or managers or leaders. I do think there's a caveat, though. I think people who know how to use AI well to make their skill, to level up their skills, to become more efficient, to become more time-centric, they may take our jobs. So
Right.
It needs us to learn how to use these tools. And just a case in point of Sara's comment that, there's a nuanced piece to coaching that I don't think an AI can ever, any kind of artificial intelligence can resolve. I do a lot of communication specific coaching, and there's an AI platform called Yoodli that I want to get, YOODLI, that I'll give a shout out to. And it does a marvelous job. In fact, better than I can, of giving some quantitative feedback. So for example, it's mainly a presentations or conversational communication app AI piece, but it can in a heartbeat tell you how many ums, ers, likes, does, those filler words. It can count those instantaneously. I would have to get a transcript of our conversation, put that into a doc. It would take me forever to do that, and it's got it instantly. It can measure eye contact in an even more robust way than I can. So it is actually better and it liberates me from these sorts of time-consuming nitty-gritty pieces that are really important, though, to someone working on improving their communication. But then I can start talking about more general pieces, like how are you building credibility in your relationship with this person? What are you doing to build trust with this person? Because while AI is growing and learning, it's still not as smart about relationships as we are. And so that's an example, I think, of how AI isn't taking over the world just yet.
No, no, you're absolutely right. But it is astounding what it can do. I know of another company, they've been around actually before most of us even knew about AI. It's called Quantify.
Yeah.
And they can upload a presentation and it can even give you feedback on the potential impact your message had on the audience, how you came across as your characteristics and your personality. I mean, it is amazing.
Right, right. We used that with a group of undergraduate students for a while, and one of the students decided to game it and see if it would be able to catch her sort of playing. And so at the time, now AI again is growing and getting better, but she realized that the phrase "Welcome to Chili's." Chili's is this chain restaurant, like a
Yes.
restaurant in the U.S. And she said, "Welcome to Chili's," just sort of spontaneously and sporadically throughout her 2 to 5 minute presentation that she was giving. And it heard these words as welcoming, supportive, kind, open. So she actually got a really high score on some of the outcome driven metrics
Wow.
because of the metrics that AI has to use. So it's another great example of how there's some nuance that requires humans still, but
Yes.
that the AI is incredible and can give us a lot of a lot of information that we wouldn't get otherwise. Absolutely. So Renee, thank you for that thought-provoking question and
Yes.
for thinking that way with us and just kind of looking into the future of AI. I love that. Sara, thank you so much for being here. What's up next is you're all going to go watch Sara's course on improving your coaching through AI. I think a nice complimentary course, just to completely shamelessly self-promote, is my Strategic Communication for Leaders course. Set the groundwork for your strategic communication and then use AI to really drill down into that specific coaching piece. Next month, December 17th, I'm back with Sam Artery. Sam is a mediator, an attorney that I've known for years. He's mediated over 5,000 mediations and conflicts. And so we are going to be talking about how to engage with conflict productively. A very timely piece for those of you that are celebrating end of year holidays and going to be spending a lot of time with family, perhaps. Always a good refresher on how to engage with conflict. So that is what's coming next week. Stay on for just a second and you'll get a QR code that will take you directly to Sara's course so that you know exactly how to find that and you won't miss it. Again, Sara, thank you so very, very much for your insight and wisdom and for pushing us to new levels with AI and coaching.
You are so welcome. It was my pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great afternoon.